Starmer or Farage? Who do you prefer? So Nigel Farage has leapfrogged Sir Keir Starmer in a new YouGov poll, making him more popular with voters. Now, in the poll, I think we can see here, you can see that 27% of Brits would vote for Reform UK if there was an election tomorrow versus 25% voting for Labour, 21% for the Tories. Now, admittedly, lots of people have said that it was too soon for Starmer and Farage to really have made a proper impression. So they both have to win, well, they both have time to win people round. But Christian, as it stands right now, where are you on this? Are you Starmer or Farage?
Well, if it's a binary choice, I would lean towards Farage, although I think both of them are seriously lacking in a number of qualities that we'd want from a Prime Minister. I also think it's terrible for the Conservatives that Kemi Badenoch's not part of this debate, but that's a whole other thing. And the reason I would lean to Nigel Farage or the right-wing candidate of any two options is governing is just as much about what you don't do as about what you do. And I think Nigel Farage has a more free market libertarian streak than Keir Starmer, and unlike the Labour Party, doesn't believe that the government can and should do everything. I also think it would be quite nice for once to have a Prime Minister who was a bit more libertarian, who allowed people to have foibles, who smoked, who drank, who wasn't trying to be like this parish priest all the time and tell us how to live our lives. And I think that would be refreshing. Like, I've got a lot of issues with Farage, and we still don't really have a clue what Reform UK's policies are, and I disagree with some of them that have been announced. But as an individual, do I think Keir Starmer has worse instincts and values than Nigel? Yeah, I think he does.
Nelufar?
No.
Okay.
No.
You would go
End of discussion.
Starmer.
That's it. Listen, I think this is more about what Starmer has not capitalised on than what Farage has done. I think if you look at this as a litmus test, this is telling us more about Starmer than it is about Farage.
Okay.
So for me, it's showing the ineptitude, the bumbling, the fact that he hasn't stood behind the people that voted him in and what they want to enact in the first 100 days of the Labour government. And to be honest, he's not been very good at the PR and press side of leading a country. Look, one thing we know about Farage, and one thing that is indisputable, is the man knows how to hold a mic, command a room, command attention. He will use public money to go off on holidays to gain clout and to go and try and curry favour with the Americans, let's say. The question here is, what would they do for the country? And there is no government that Nigel Farage would lead that would create prosperity for more Britons. I think a certain sector of Britain might benefit from a Farage government, but the rest won't. Look, there's a lot we can say about him, and the fact that he's been on shows like I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. He sees himself as a celebrity. He's quite the dandy of the political classes, actually, going from here, there and everywhere, going on, as you showed earlier, the Jordan Peterson interview. And Labour leader Starmer, I mean, apart from being a stuffy politician, what else do we see him as? And I think that is the biggest thing that I see in the results here. Labour, Starmer are not doing enough.
Okay, so you think this is a failing of Labour rather than a benefit of Farage or whatever he has done. So tell me where Labour has failed, or Starmer specifically has failed in your eyes.
It's this very kind of, how can I say this? This bland, this very matter of fact, this not a strong man, but a firm man tactic that Starmer's got going on. There's very little appealing about Starmer, whereas Farage, ever the populist, ever the sprightly young man that he seems to be, going from here, there to everywhere, he commands attention. So look, Labour have got a lot going for them, okay? I believe, and here's a prediction, you can quote me on this if I'm wrong, I believe that within the next year, there's going to be a lot more of Labour's policies that will come to fruition, and the country will have a different opinion on him. I genuinely believe that. He has to be more than just the policies that he enacts. Christian mentioned that we don't really know what reform stands for. Well, we know what Starmer stands for, and he has to push that as an agenda.
Do we not know what reform stands for? I mean, reform
policy-wise,
immigration.
Well, there's to be educated, but
there are certain things like immigration and foreign relations, which, by the way, I think Reform have had a very difficult week. I think they've They've tripped themselves up on net zero, and I think they are not covering themselves in glory over Ukraine. But the fact that we've got to this point, I find this fascinating because I've sort of followed Nigel Farage ever since I started following politics in 2013. And there was a period up until maybe 5-6 years ago where everyone just conceded that he's sort of a 13-14% politician. The fact that he's now leading a party up to 27% is a damning indictment of both the Tories and the Labour Party.
Well, there's somewhere where both of you seem to agree, actually, that this isn't sort of a win for Farage. This is really a loss for the other parties. Mary from Devon, what's your view when it comes to Starmer v Farage? Who would you like to see as Prime Minister?
I definitely like Starmer.
Starmer over Farage, why is that?
I feel that Farage, along with even the Tory party for years now, I'm over 70, so I've been affected by the lack of heating concessions, etc. But I accept that that's a needs must for the country.
Okay.
But I think the Farage type of politics is Britain first, Britain first. I believe in unity. I believe in compassion. I grew up in an era where we fought for the Berlin Wall to come down, where we freed Nelson Mandela, etc. And we had really good world unity interests at heart. And I feel Farage is, we want Britain first, Britain first. I really can't accept those kind of politics.
But many people do, Mary. They feel that our population is fit to burst and actually our infrastructure isn't there for that sort of population growth. Can you feel their pain in that extent?
Very little, to be honest. Okay. I'm a very left. I was a big Corbyn fan, but I do believe that I still work 42 hours a week with adults with very high autism level, and we rely on so much on agencies and people from other countries because we cannot get the staff. This is quite sad. And quite honestly, if I'm going to be blunt, we have a lot of good, hard-working people coming in, whereas a lot of our own, it's not that they can't get the jobs, they don't want them. And I think that's sad. Or maybe they don't have the confidence or the belief. But I do think I was very against, I did the march for 6 hours against coming out of Europe. I do think unity is absolutely paramount. And any argument, nobody's fully right, nobody's fully wrong, but we need to debate in an orderly manner and have compassion.
Debate in an orderly manner. Mary, you should call up more often. Thank you very much for your call. Mary, you make an interesting point there that actually people coming into this country are contributing. I read an article not so long ago that actually they're contributing more to the government's coffers than the average Brit born in this country. So do we think that Nigel Farage has it right when he talks about immigration, or is he just pulling on the insecurities and the worries and the fears of large swathes of the British public?
I think we need to be much more nuanced when it comes to immigration, although that's usually said by people who support mass immigration. I say that as someone who thinks we really need to get the numbers down. For example, there are, of course, many skills that we do need. We talk about house building. We don't have enough house builders. Do we need perhaps a temporary increase in visas for house builders? Yes, we do. But there are other areas where not only have the visa routes been taken advantage of, I would argue, for example, with social care, but also we've got not just the individual migrants who come through, we've also got a problem where if someone's coming through and earning £25,000, £27,000 in a job that we need, fine. But they're also bringing in huge numbers of dependents, and they are costing the state a great deal. And that's the sort of debate we need to have. And I think we've got to credit Nigel Farage for pushing this issue so much that it's now such an important issue that many people are rightly hearing talked about at the top level.
It's a really interesting response that you've just given, both nuanced, and I welcome that. But at the end of it, I heard the turn. I heard the turn from something logical, sensible, something factual that we could both sit here and talk about, through to that, the weaponisation of what migrants, immigration, asylum seekers, and this.
What do you mean by
The
that?
turn is
Say?
when we start saying things like, for example, you know, they're bringing in their aunties and uncles and grandmas and granddads and their wives and uncles.
Well,
the truth is, if they do, they can't be on benefits. They have to prove that they can support them in order to bring them into the countries. They have to prove that they can house them. They have to prove. No, they can't.
They can be on
No, they
benefits.
can't.
They can.
Simply not.
If the children would be entitled to state schools, they're entitled to the
Right,
NHS.
so state school is
they're
not a
entitled
benefit.
to pension.
The most important.
Well, it's a form of welfare that we pay for, that their parents are not producing in tax revenue to cover their. So they are a net drain.
That would be you. I mean, that's absolutely. I mean, do you see? This is what happens when you take something as sensible as controlled migration, which I agree with you, to why should they be allowed to have kids here? They're a drain on our society. Well, those kids might grow up to be British, productive and useful, as Mary mentioned, members of our society.
Emmy Award-winning documentary makers, perhaps. Janice from Essex, what's your view on this?
Oh, hi Storm, lovely to see you. I'm getting panicking because when you're on maternity leave, I don't know what I'm going to do.
Oh, Janice, trust me, there will still be a show and it will be equally as fabulous, maybe even more so. I'll be watching it from home, so do not panic. Thank you, though.
Never.
What's your view on this topic then? Starmer or Farage? We've got sidelined by immigration, but that's obviously going to happen in this debate.
Can I first say something? What a terrible state this country's in. If that's our choices. We have Starmer going around the world trying to big our country up. He's rubbished it, but he's making us look a laughing stock. Then you've got Nigel, who's my MP, who's going around the country. I get that he's got to build up his party, but he spends too much time in America, and that means we're going to have Trump ideas. Well, you know, we need to sort immigration out, but I don't want to do it Trump's way.
In what way do we need to sort immigration out? What part of immigration upsets you, Janice?
Well, I do think what I think is this government has just made it so attractive for people to come here. When you listen to the litany of stuff they're getting, I sit here cold. They have 3 squares a day. They're offering driving lessons and free travel, get nurse, doctors, everything.
Janice, are you talking about illegal migration, or are you talking about legal migration?
Illegal.
Illegal migration makes up...
I know it's a lot lower.
It makes up 1% of the population, Janice, and yet it seems to make up 99% of the discussion that we have when we have. Why do you think that is?
I just think because we're seeing the votes, we don't know how many people. I mean, we bring over doctors, nurses, scientists, everything. If you look at any programme on our TV, you will see migrants from other countries who absolutely do brilliant for our country.
Yeah.
The problem is you get people coming in, they're on the black market, you know, they're working for Deliveroo. They're getting paid a pittance, and I think that's exploitation of them. So we've got to find a different way of handling this.
Okay, Janice,
because it's rubbing people up the wrong way.
Thank you very much for your call, but there's a concern about how Farage would deal with it. David from Essex, what's your view?
My view is that Nigel Farage represents what the population really feel, and we're not allowed to express how we feel about what's going on in our country. I'm 67. I grew up in London, and it's unrecognisable now to when we grew up there, in every aspect, and it ain't for the better, that's for sure. Most of my friends have all moved away from London. They can't afford to live there anymore.
Yeah.
But they're all working people, and we all feel exactly the same, that we've been let down badly. Not only, and most of us are and were Conservative supporters, and we won't be voting for them anymore because they let us down more than Labour has done.
What is Farage giving you? What is the key policy?
He's given us a bit of hope. He's given us a bit of hope that how our country used to be, and that we'd like it to get back to.
But to what end? What policy do you hear from Farage that you think, yep, that's the one for me, that's the one we need?
Well, everyone keeps harping on about immigration because it is the biggest issue amongst everyone. I've got 6 grandchildren myself. I fear for them growing up. What are they going to have in front of them? It doesn't look good to me. Housing, jobs, just general safety and all. The safety of with children growing up today is beyond belief. I grew up in East End, very rough area, supposedly. But knife crimes were never. When the knife crime happened, it was something big. Now it's just every single day.
Knife crime is absolutely an issue, David, but crime in general, you'll be happy to hear, and surprised to hear, is actually going down, oddly, because when we pick up the papers, all we see is crime, 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 so it's sort of, it plays on our mind slightly differently there. But for those reasons, you think Farage, and do you understand his policies? Do you think they're well thought through?
Yeah, I do. Okay. Everyone seems to palm him off as a silly person. He's not a silly. He's a very educated man, and he knows what he's talking about. We just need a chance. We need someone like him to get in and show him what he can do for the country. Right. But no one wants to give these people a chance because they always say we're far too right and this, that, and the other.
David, I'm afraid they do now. More people want to give Reform a chance than they do Labour or the Conservatives, so it looks like the tide has turned there. David, thank you very much for your call. We could talk about this all day. We're getting so many calls for it. Thank you for all of them. But now we need to move.